Captain Darius Holt stood on the bridge of the distant Thunder, watching the targeting display with steady hands despite the tremor in his chest. 20 years. 20 years of council restrictions, resource quotas, and protective oversight that kept humanity confined to 12 systems while other species expanded freely. Today, that changed. Railgun capacitors at 98%, Tactical Officer Jenna Reeves announced, her voice crisp and professional. The young woman's fingers danced across her console, triple-checking calculations that had been verified 100 times already. Projectile loaded. Magnetic acceleration rails primed. Darius nodded slowly, his eyes shifting to the alien figure standing rigidly near the viewport. Council Observer Kethmar, a tall being with crystalline skin that refracted light in uncomfortable ways, had remained silent since the mission briefing. The alien's three-fingered hands gripped a datapad with barely concealed tension. "You understand what you are doing is an act of war," Kethmar said finally, his translated voice carrying an odd harmonic quality. "The Vortian Depot is Council sovereign territory. This aggression will not be forgiven." Darius turned to face him directly. "The depot has been launching raids into our civilian shipping lanes for 6 months. We provided evidence. The Council ignored it. Sometimes you have to make your own justice." "Justice," Kethmar repeated, the word sounding almost mocking through the translator. "Your species always believes itself righteous." Jenna's console chimed. "Target lock confirmed. The depot shields are rotating to the northern hemisphere. We have a 3-minute window on the southern approach, exactly as intelligence predicted." Darius moved to his command chair, settling into the worn seat that had carried him through a dozen skirmishes along the frontier. The distant Thunder was small compared to Council warships, barely 300 meters long, but she carried humanity's most advanced weapon. A magnetic accelerator capable of launching a tungsten uranium alloy projectile at 4% the speed of light. "All crew, battle stations," Darius announced over the ship-wide channel. "This is not a drill. We are engaging a Council target in approximately 90 seconds. All non-essential personnel to emergency shelters. Engineering, I need everything you can give to the railgun." The bridge lights shifted to crimson as the ship transitioned to combat status. Darius felt the subtle vibration through the deck plating as the massive weapon drew power from the distant Thunder's fusion cores. External cameras showed the railgun's barrel extending forward, glowing faintly with built-up electromagnetic charge. 60 seconds to firing window, Jenna counted down. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency, making micro-adjustments to their trajectory. Depot shields still rotated away. "No sign they've detected our approach." Kethmar moved closer, his crystalline features catching the red emergency lighting. "Captain Holt, I am required by Council law to formally protest this action. If you proceed, you condemn your species to retaliation." Darius met the alien's eyes, all 3 of them. "Your Council has been condemning us to slow death for 2 decades. At least this way, we fight back." 30 seconds. The Vortian Depot appeared on the main display, a massive hexagonal structure orbiting a barren moon. Weapon platforms bristled from its surface, and dozens of Council patrol ships moved in lazy patterns around it. Intelligence suggested nearly 10,000 personnel worked inside, manufacturing weapons that were sold to every species except humanity. 15 seconds. Final targeting lock acquired. Darius's finger hovered over the authorization panel. One button. One decision. One shot that would either free humanity or doom them to extinction. He thought of the civilian freighters torn apart by pirates flying Council-manufactured ships. He thought of the colonists on New Portugal, orbital bombarded when they tried to expand beyond their designated boundaries. He thought of his daughter, growing up in a universe where her species was perpetually beneath others. 5 seconds. "Fire," Darius said calmly. The distant Thunder shuddered as magnetic coils discharged in sequence, accelerating the projectile through the kilometer-long barrel in a fraction of a second. The ship lurched backward despite the inertial dampeners, compensating for the massive energy release. Through the viewport, a streak of white light tore across the black void, moving so fast it seemed to exist in multiple places simultaneously. Jenna's console erupted in data streams. Projectile away. Impact in 4 seconds. 3. 2. The depot shields flickered to life too late. The tungsten uranium round struck the southern hemisphere with the force of a small nuclear weapon. But instead of a simple explosion, something impossible happened. Reality screamed. The depot didn't just explode, it folded. The hexagonal structure twisted in ways that violated 3-dimensional space, bending backward into itself like a reflection eating its mirror. A pulse of distorted light expanded outward, and where it passed, the stars themselves flickered and doubled. What the hell? Jenna gasped, her hands frozen above her console. Darius stood slowly, watching the expanding wave of spatial distortion roll toward them. The depot was gone, replaced by a swirling vortex of fractured space where multiple versions of reality seemed to overlap. He could see ships that weren't there, moons that existed in different positions simultaneously, stars that blinked in and out of existence. Kethmar stumbled backward, his crystalline skin flashing bright colors in what Darius recognized as extreme distress. No. No, this cannot be. You struck the central nexus. The teleportation network. You have broken the foundation itself. The what? Darius demanded, grabbing the alien's arm. What are you talking about? The depot was a cover, Kethmar said, his voice breaking into discordant harmonics. Beneath it lies one of the Council's primary teleportation hubs. Quantum-linked gates connecting thousands of systems. You have shattered the network stabilization matrix. You have cracked reality itself. The distortion wave reached the distant thunder. For a moment, Darius saw himself standing in 3 different positions on the bridge. He felt the sensation of existing in multiple times simultaneously, about to give the order to fire, watching the impact, experiencing this conversation. Then the moment collapsed back to singular reality, leaving him gasping. Damage report, he shouted. Jenna's hands shook as she worked her console. Sensors are going insane. I'm reading the depot in 73 different locations simultaneously. Council patrol ships are appearing, disappearing, reappearing. Time signatures are fluctuating. Captain, some of those ships are reading as existing 5 minutes in the future and 10 minutes in the past at the same time. On the main display, the chaos spread. The distortion wave continued expanding, touching everything in its path. Where it passed, the fundamental rules governing spacetime simply broke. Ships fractured into temporal echoes. Planets phased in and out of visible reality. Communication signals arrived before they were sent. Darius watched a Council cruiser attempt to engage its teleportation drive to escape. The moment it activated, the ship split into infinite copies, each existing in a slightly different location, creating a corridor of duplicated vessels that stretched across space like a grotesque tunnel. Then all the copies collapsed into a single point and vanished with a flash of light that hurt to look at. All Council ships are attempting emergency retreat, Jenna reported, her voice steadier now as training took over. But every time they activate teleportation systems, they experience catastrophic failures. Some are fragmenting. Others are just gone, sensors can't locate them anywhere. Kethmar had fallen to his knees, his datapad forgotten on the deck. The network spans the entire galactic arm. 8,000 connected gates. Millions of ships rely on instant transit daily. If one nexus fails catastrophically, the quantum entanglement cascades through every connected node. He looked up at Darius, his 3 eyes wide with horror. You have not destroyed a depot, Captain. You have murdered an empire. Darius felt the weight of those words settle on his shoulders like a physical burden. He had wanted to strike back, to prove humanity wouldn't accept oppression quietly. Instead, he had apparently triggered an apocalypse. Can it be stopped? Darius asked. The cascade, the spreading distortion, can we contain it? Kethmar slowly shook his head. The Council's greatest scientists spent 3 centuries perfecting the teleportation network. It operates on principles of quantum entanglement across interstellar distances, holding space itself in a delicate web of stabilized wormholes. That web is now tearing itself apart. Each connected gate will fail in sequence, spreading the chaos across every system in Council space. Jenna turned from her console, her face pale. Captain, we're receiving distress calls. Hundreds of them. Every Council frequency is screaming for help. Ships trapped in partial teleportation, space stations phasing between dimensions, colonies experiencing temporal loops. They're all asking for emergency assistance. From us? Darius said bitterly. We just caused this nightmare. No sir, Jenna corrected quietly. They're asking for help from anyone using conventional drives. Ships that don't rely on teleportation technology. She paused, meeting his eyes. They're asking for help from humanity. We're the only ones who can still navigate normally. Darius looked at the chaos displayed across every screen. The most powerful empire in the galaxy was tearing itself apart, their greatest achievement becoming their doom. And humanity, restricted and suppressed for decades, suddenly found themselves as the only stable force in a universe coming undone. He moved to the communication station and opened a direct channel to Earth Command. This is Captain Darius Holt of the Distant Thunder. Mission status critical. We have successfully destroyed the Vortian depot, but we have also triggered a catastrophic failure in the Council's teleportation network. Reality itself is fracturing across Council space. Requesting immediate orders. The response came after a tense delay, normal lightspeed communication, not the instantaneous quantum channels the Council used. Or had used, before humanity shattered them. Distant Thunder, this is Admiral Okonkwo. We're receiving reports of spatial anomalies across 300 systems. Stand by for new orders. Do not, repeat, do not engage any Council forces. If what our scientists are telling me is correct, we may have just become the most important species in the galaxy. Whether we like it or not. Darius closed the channel and stared at the spreading chaos on the displays. The railgun shot was supposed to be a statement of defiance. Instead, it had rewritten the entire galactic order in a single, catastrophic moment. Kethmar remained on his knees, watching his civilization's foundation crumble. You wanted freedom from Council oversight, he said quietly. Congratulations, Captain Holt. You have achieved it. Along with freedom from stable reality, freedom from predictable physics, and freedom from any certainty about tomorrow. Darius had no response. He simply watched the universe break, and wondered if humanity had just saved themselves or damned everyone. The distortion wave continued spreading outward, touching star after star, system after system, unraveling everything the Council had built. And in the wreckage, only humanity remained stable. The shot had been fired. Reality had broken. And nothing would ever be the same. Council Administrator Velcris Thon had served the Imperium for 43 standard years, and in all that time, he had never seen the central coordination chamber fall silent. The vast spherical room, normally alive with holographic displays and the constant chatter of 1,000 administrators managing galactic affairs, now hung in stunned quiet. Every screen showed the same impossible sight, reality itself falling apart. Sector 9 reports complete loss of gate network connectivity. A voice finally broke the silence. Junior Technician Myra Austin, one of the few humans employed in Council infrastructure, stood at her station with steady hands despite the chaos surrounding her. 14 systems experiencing temporal displacement. Fleet Coordinator Jexuel's entire armada has fragmented across dimensional boundaries. Velcris moved through the chamber, his elongated form gliding between workstations with practiced ease. His species, the Thoraxians, had evolved on a high-gravity world, giving them a sleek, streamlined physiology that appeared almost liquid in motion. Right now, that grace felt meaningless. He was watching an empire die in real time. Show me the cascade pattern, Velcris commanded, his voice modulated to carry calm authority even as panic threatened to overwhelm him. His career had been built on maintaining order, on ensuring the smooth operation of systems that govern hundreds of civilizations. Those systems were now tearing themselves apart. Myra's fingers worked quickly across her interface, pulling up a galactic map that made Velcris's 3 hearts skip in unison. The destruction spread like a disease, jumping from gate to gate through the quantum entanglement network. What had started at the Vortian depot, or rather, at the hidden nexus beneath it, now consumed entire sectors. The cascade is following the primary transit routes, Myra explained, her human accent still carrying traces of Earth despite a decade working for the Council. Every major hub is experiencing catastrophic failure. Gates aren't just going offline, they're creating localized reality fractures. Spatial inversions, temporal loops, dimensional bleeding. The Corvin system just reported seeing 3 different versions of their own sun, each from a different point in time. Velcris felt a chill run through his circulatory system. The Corvin system housed 12 billion souls. Evacuation status. They can't evacuate, Myra said quietly. Every ship that tries to activate teleportation drives adds to the instability. 2 colony transports attempted emergency jumps and fragmented into quantum echoes. The survivors, if you can call them that, exist in multiple time streams simultaneously. They're conscious in 17 different moments at once, experiencing their own deaths and survivals in parallel. A horrible death. Velcris had seen the preliminary reports of such fracturing. The victims didn't die cleanly, they became trapped in recursive temporal loops, living and dying and living again, their consciousness scattered across branching realities until madness claimed them. If it even could be called madness when your mind existed in 50 simultaneous states. Fleet Coordinator Jexuel appeared suddenly on the main communication screen, his scaled features twisted in barely controlled rage. The Varshan coordinator had commanded the Council's military forces for 2 decades, his reputation built on ruthless efficiency and unwavering loyalty. Now he looked lost. Administrator Thon, Jexuel growled, his forked tongue flickering with agitation. My fleet is scattered across 87 parallel dimensions. I have ships reporting battles that haven't happened yet and receiving damage from attacks that occurred 3 days ago. Half my commanders exist in temporal loops, giving orders that contradict themselves because they are simultaneously in the past and future. How do I fight an enemy when I can't even maintain coherent existence? Velcris forced himself to remain calm. Coordinator, you must cease all teleportation immediately. Every activation destabilizes. We already stopped. Jexuel shouted, his professionalism cracking. It doesn't matter. The gates were quantum entangled across the entire network. When the Vorshan nexus fractured, it created a chain reaction. Every gate connected to that nexus began failing. And those gates were connected to other gates, which connected to more gates. We're watching exponential collapse, Administrator. In 6 hours, the entire galactic arm will be experiencing reality fractures. 6 hours. Velcris felt his composure waver. The Council's teleportation network had been the foundation of their power for 3 centuries. Instantaneous travel between any 2 points in explored space, maintained through quantum gates that held spacetime itself in carefully balanced tension. That same network, that marvel of engineering and physics, had become a weapon destroying its creators. What about conventional drives? Velcris asked, already knowing the answer would complicate everything. Ships using slower-than-light propulsion. Myra answered before Jexuel could respond. Operating normally. The reality fractures don't affect vessels using standard fusion drives or traditional warp engines. They manipulate normal space without touching the quantum substrate that teleportation relies on. Jexuel's expression darkened. You mean human technology? You're saying the only ships that can navigate this nightmare are the ones built by the species we've been restricting for 2 decades. The bitter irony wasn't lost on Velcris. The Council had limited humanity's expansion specifically because their slower technology seemed primitive, inefficient. While every other species had adopted Council-provided teleportation systems, humanity had stubbornly continued developing their own conventional engines. The Council had mocked them for it, treating their refusal as backward pride. Now that primitive technology was the only thing working reliably. We need to contact Earth Command, Velcris said, the words tasting like defeat. Request emergency assistance for evacuation and rescue operations. Request assistance from the species that caused this catastrophe? Jexuel hissed. From the ones who fired that cursed railgun. The humans didn't know what they were hitting, Myra interjected, her voice sharp. The Vorshan depot's true purpose was classified at the highest levels. Even I didn't know there was a nexus beneath it, and I work in network administration. The humans thought they were destroying a military target. Velcris studied the young human woman. Myra had joined Council service fresh from Earth's Technical Academy, one of the few humans allowed to work in critical infrastructure. She had proven herself brilliant, advancing faster than most species despite the subtle discrimination she faced. Now she stood as potentially the most valuable person in the chamber. Technician Austin, Velcris said formally. You understand human engineering better than anyone here. Can their ships safely operate in the fracture zones? Myra pulled up technical schematics, her eyes scanning data rapidly. Yes. Human warp drives create localized spacetime bubbles without relying on quantum entanglement. They'll experience the visual effects of reality fracturing, temporal echoes, dimensional bleeding, but their ships won't fragment. They can navigate while everyone else is trapped. Then humanity becomes our lifeline, Velcris said, watching his own words register on the faces around him. Terror. Anger. Desperate hope. They're the only ones who can rescue populations trapped in fracture zones. The only ones who can deliver supplies to isolated systems. The only ones who can hold this galaxy together while we attempt repairs. Jexuel's image flickered, a sign that even the quantum communication network was degrading. You're suggesting we hand them control of the entire galactic transit system. Make them indispensable. Give them everything we fought to deny them. I'm suggesting we survive, Velcris replied coldly. Pride is a luxury we can no longer afford, Coordinator. An alarm shrieked through the chamber. Myra spun to her console, her face going pale. Administrator, we have a critical emergency. The Thessin core worlds just experienced complete temporal inversion. The entire system is running backward through time. 2 billion people are living their lives in reverse, and they are aware of it. Horror swept through Velcris. Temporal inversion was theoretically possible but considered impossible to survive consciously. If the Thessians were aware while time ran backward, their consciousness would be experiencing existence in reverse, unlearning everything, moving toward birth rather than death, perceiving effects before causes. The psychological damage would be absolute. How long until it resolves? Velcris asked, dreading the answer. It won't, Myra said, her voice hollow. The fracture is stable. Unless we can restore the gate network stabilization matrix, the Thessian core will remain locked in temporal reversal permanently. Those 2 billion people will experience their entire lives backward until they reach conception, then the loop will reset and they'll live forward again, only to run backward once more. An eternal cycle. Velcris felt something break inside him. This wasn't just a disaster. This was damnation. The Council's greatest achievement had become an engine of cosmic horror, inflicting fates worse than death on billions of innocent beings. Open a channel to Earth Command, Velcris ordered, his voice barely above a whisper. Priority Alpha 1. Tell them we accept full responsibility for the current crisis and formally request emergency assistance. Tell them we will grant complete access to all Council space and remove all previous restrictions on human expansion and technology. Jexuel's image flickered again. Administrator, you don't have the authority to make such promises. The High Council must approve. The High Council is scattered across 17 different dimensional planes. Velcris shouted, his composure finally shattering. Half of them exist in 3 places simultaneously. The other half are trapped in temporal loops. There is no High Council anymore, Coordinator. There is only chaos and the desperate need to save whoever we still can. Silence fell across the chamber. The truth hung heavy. The government that had ruled the galaxy for centuries no longer functioned. The teleportation network that connected and controlled everything had become their doom. Myra worked quietly at her console, composing the message to Earth. Her hands moved with mechanical precision, but Velcris saw the tension in her shoulders. This was her species' moment. The people the Council had suppressed and mocked were about to become the galaxy's only hope. Message composed, Myra announced. Awaiting your authorization to transmit, Administrator. Velcris moved to her station, looking at the words on the screen. They were simple, direct, and utterly devastating to everything the Council represented. To Earth Command, the Council's teleportation network has suffered catastrophic failure. Reality fractures are spreading across all Council space. Billions are trapped, dying, or experiencing fates worse than death. We formally request immediate humanitarian assistance. All previous restrictions on human activity are hereby suspended. We need you. Please help us. His hand hovered over the authorization key. Once he pressed it, everything changed. The Council's authority would be meaningless. Humanity would have the power, the leverage, the moral high ground. They could demand anything and the Council would have to grant it. But billions were suffering. Entire civilizations faced extinction or eternal torment. And only humanity could help. Velcris pressed the key. The message transmitted at light speed, slow, primitive, but reliable. It would take hours to reach Earth. Hours while more systems fell into chaos. Hours while reality continued fragmenting. But it was the only option left. Now we wait, Velcris said quietly. Myra turned to face him, her expression unreadable. Administrator, I should tell you something. I've been sending reports back to Earth for the past 3 years. Information about Council infrastructure, gate network specifications, everything I could access without triggering security protocols. Velcris stared at her. You've been spying. I've been preparing, Myra corrected. My people knew the Council's suppression couldn't last forever. We knew eventually there would be conflict. We just didn't expect it to happen like this. She gestured at the chaos displayed on every screen. But now that it has, Earth Command won't be surprised by our message. They'll already have response plans ready. Part of Velcris wanted to feel betrayed, but mostly he felt exhausted. Were you involved in planning the Vortian strike? No, Myra said firmly. That was pure military action. Captain Holt didn't know what he was really hitting, none of us did. But the aftermath? Humanity will handle it well. We've been ready for our moment, Administrator. We just didn't think it would come at such a terrible cost. An alert chimed. Velcris looked at the display and felt his heart sink further. The fracture wave had reached the Kelvos expanse, a densely populated region home to 40 systems and 30 billion beings. Every gate in the region had failed simultaneously, creating overlapping reality fractures that merged together into what the sensors labeled as a quantum storm, a region where multiple dimensions, timelines, and physical laws collided chaotically. No one can survive in there, Jexuel said, his image now degraded and flickering badly. Not even humans with their conventional drives. The dimensional turbulence would tear any ship apart. Then those 30 billion are lost, Velcris said numbly. Added to the billions already suffering across 100 other systems. We're watching the greatest disaster in recorded history, and we caused it ourselves. Myra's console chimed with an incoming transmission. She read it quickly, her expression shifting to something between shock and hope. Administrator, we have a response from Earth Command. It arrived faster than expected, they must have been monitoring our frequencies. What do they say? Myra read the message aloud. Received your distress call. Humanitarian fleet already assembling. 300 rescue ships departing within the hour. Admiral Okonkwo sends her assurance that humanity will do everything possible to help. We don't forget who we are, even when given power. Message ends. Velcris felt something unfamiliar, gratitude mixed with shame. Humanity could have gloated, could have demanded terms and concessions before rendering aid. Instead, they were simply coming to help. The species the Council had suppressed and mocked was proving more noble than their oppressors. We don't deserve their mercy, Velcris said quietly. No, Myra agreed. But you're going to get it anyway. Because that's who we are. Over the next hours, reports flooded in. Human ships were already moving into the nearest fracture zones, evacuating trapped populations using their conventional drives. They navigated the dimensional chaos that stranded Council vessels, pulling survivors from ships fragmented across realities, delivering supplies to colonies cut off from all support. Velcris watched it happen in real time. The Council, which had ruled through superior technology and centralized control, was being saved by the species they had deemed inferior. The irony was almost poetic. But the fractures continued spreading. More systems fell into chaos. And somewhere in the back of Velcris's mind, a dark question formed: could the damage even be repaired? Or had the Council's greatest achievement permanently broken reality itself? He would find answers eventually. But first, they had to save everyone they could. And for that, they needed humanity's help. The Empire was unraveling. But perhaps from its collapse, something better could be built. If they survived long enough to try. Dr. Simone Brackwell stood at the observation window of the research station Kepler's Promise, watching reality flicker like a broken holovid. 6 months had passed since Captain Darius Holt's railgun shot shattered the Council's teleportation network, and the universe still hadn't recovered. Through the reinforced transparisteel, she could see a binary star system that shouldn't exist, 2 suns occupying the same orbital space, one from this timeline, another bleeding through from a parallel dimension where the stellar formation had evolved differently. The quantum readings are getting worse, her assistant, Dr. Marcus Webb, announced from his workstation. The older physicist had spent 40 years studying theoretical spacetime mechanics, but nothing in his education had prepared him for reality itself becoming negotiable. We're detecting dimensional overlap in 70% of surveyed space now. Up from 63% last week. Simone turned from the window, her dark eyes reflecting the chaotic light of the fractured stars. At 38, she had become humanity's leading expert on spatial anomalies by necessity rather than choice. When the Council's network collapsed, Earth Command had drafted every physicist who understood quantum mechanics. Simone's specialty in wormhole theory made her uniquely qualified to understand what had gone wrong. And possibly, terrifyingly, how to fix it. Show me the cascade model, she said, moving to the central holographic display. Marcus pulled up a 3-dimensional map of the galactic arm, color-coded to show the spread of reality fractures. Red zones indicated complete dimensional collapse. Orange showed temporal instability. Yellow marked regions where physics operated unpredictably. Green showed stable space. There was very little green left. The fractures have stopped spreading, Marcus noted, manipulating the display to show temporal progression. But they are not healing. Every gate nexus that failed created a permanent wound in spacetime. We're looking at 2,317 separate fracture zones, each generating its own localized physics. Simone studied the data with growing unease. She had spent months analyzing the Council's teleportation technology, reverse engineering their quantum gates from salvaged components. The elegance of their design was remarkable, a network of entangled wormholes held in perfect tension, allowing instantaneous transit across interstellar distances. But that same elegance had made the network catastrophically fragile. When one major nexus failed, it triggered a cascade that shattered every connected gate. The Council had built a house of cards spanning the galaxy, and humanity had knocked it down with a single shot. "What's the casualty count up to?" Simone asked quietly. Marcus's expression darkened. "Estimated 4 to 7 billion dead. Another 23 billion trapped in temporal anomalies or dimensional fractures. The Thessian core is still locked in temporal reversal. The Kelvos expanse remains a quantum storm. And we're still finding isolated pockets where entire populations are experiencing reality differently, some moving faster through time, some slower, some living in recursive loops. 70 billion casualties. The number was so vast it felt abstract, meaningless. Simone forced herself to remember these weren't statistics, they were individuals, families, civilizations. Lives ended or twisted into incomprehensible suffering because of one catastrophic failure. The door to the research lab hissed open. Captain Darius Holt entered, looking older than his 42 years. The man who had fired the shot that broke reality now dedicated every waking moment to fixing the damage. Dark circles under his eyes suggested he wasn't sleeping much. "Dr. Brackwell," Darius said, his voice rough with fatigue. "Admiral Okonkwo wants an update on the stabilization project. The Council remnants are getting desperate. Former Administrator Velchris Thon sent another plea yesterday, asking when we can begin repairs." Simone gestured at the holographic display. "Tell them the truth, we can't. Not without understanding the full scope of what we're dealing with. The Council's gate network wasn't just technology, Captain. It was restructuring spacetime itself at a fundamental level. They had thousands of artificial wormholes pinning reality in place like stitches holding fabric together. When those stitches broke, the fabric tore." Darius moved closer to the display, studying the fracture zones with haunted eyes. Simone knew he blamed himself for everything. He carried the weight of 70 billion deaths on his shoulders, even though he couldn't have known what his target concealed. "So what are our options?" Darius asked. Simone took a deep breath. This was the conversation she had been dreading. "We have 3 theoretical approaches, and none of them are simple." She manipulated the display, pulling up her research data. Option 1, do nothing. Let the fractures stabilize naturally over time. Physics abhors instability. Eventually, quantum fluctuations will smooth out and reality will settle into a new equilibrium. The problem is that could take anywhere from 50 to 5,000 years, and billions more will suffer or die in the interim. Marcus added quietly, "We're also not certain the natural equilibrium would be survivable. Reality might stabilize into configurations where life as we understand it can't exist." Option 2, Simone continued, is to attempt repairs using modified Council technology. We could build new quantum gates, create a replacement network to restabilize spacetime. It would take decades and require cooperation from every surviving technical civilization, but it's theoretically possible. Darius studied her face. But we would essentially be rebuilding the same system that failed catastrophically. We'd be trusting that we could engineer it better, make it more resilient. One mistake, one miscalculation, and we could trigger another cascade, possibly worse than the first. "And option 3? Darius asked, though his expression suggested he already knew he wouldn't like the answer. Simone pulled up her most classified research files, displaying equations and models that represented 6 months of desperate theoretical work. Option 3 is to deliberately reshape reality. Use controlled quantum manipulation to write new physical laws into the affected regions. Essentially, we would become architects of localized universes, creating custom physics that stabilize the fractures while avoiding the vulnerabilities of the Council's network." The implications hung heavy in the air. Marcus turned away from his console, removing his glasses to clean them nervously, a habit Simone recognized as his way of processing uncomfortable ideas. "You're talking about playing God," Darius said slowly. "Rewriting the rules of physics to suit our needs." "I'm talking about survival," Simone corrected. "Every day we wait, more people die or suffer. The Thessian core has been living backward through time for 6 months. Can you imagine the psychological damage? They're experiencing every memory in reverse, watching their children grow younger, their lives happening. Some are reportedly going insane from the cognitive dissonance." Darius walked to the observation window, staring out at the flickering binary stars. "If we reshape reality, who decides what the new rules are? What gives humanity the right to determine how physics works for billions of other beings?" The same thing that's given us the responsibility to help them for the past 6 months, Simone replied. We're the only ones who can. Our conventional drives work. Our ships navigate the chaos. We've rescued more people in half a year than the Council saved in centuries of rule. Because we didn't rely on their broken technology, Darius said. There's a difference between using what works and fundamentally rewriting existence. Before Simone could respond, alarms shrieked through the station. Marcus spun back to his console, his fingers flying across the controls. We have incoming transmission. Priority Alpha. It's from former fleet coordinator Jexuel. The holographic display shifted, showing the scarred face of the Varshan military commander. Jexuel looked different than Simone remembered from intelligence briefings, thinner, his scales dull, his eyes carrying a desperate edge. Dr. Brackwell, Jexuel said without preamble. I am transmitting coordinates for a classified council facility. It survived the cascade intact because it operated independently of the main gate network. Inside, you will find the original research data for the teleportation system, complete schematics, theoretical foundations, every calculation and test result from 3 centuries of development. Simone felt her pulse quicken. Why are you giving us this? Because I have seen what remains of my civilization, Jexuel replied, his voice carrying bitter exhaustion. The Council's pride built a fragile tower, and humanity's desperation knocked it down. Now both our peoples must live with the consequences. If there is any chance to repair the damage, you need that data. And if the damage cannot be repaired. He paused, his forked tongue flickering. Then perhaps you can build something better. The transmission ended. Marcus pulled up the coordinates, his expression shifting to shock. That facility is in the Draven Nebula. Deep inside a quantum storm. The dimensional turbulence there is among the worst we've surveyed. Can we reach it? Darius asked. With a human ship using conventional drives? Maybe, Marcus said. But it would take weeks to navigate through the storm, and the crew would be exposed to extreme temporal distortion. They might experience years subjectively while only days pass outside. Simone made her decision quickly. Prep the swift current. I'm going personally. Simone, no, Marcus protested. Send a remote drone, use automated systems. This is too important for automation, Simone interrupted. If that data is real, it could give us everything we need to attempt repairs. Or to understand why repairs are impossible and we need to try something else. She turned to Darius. I'll need a military escort. Someone who understands what's at stake. Darius nodded slowly. I'll take you myself. The distant thunder is still operational. Captain, you don't have to, Simone began. Yes, I do, Darius said firmly. I broke reality. The least I can do is help fix it. 3 days later, Simone found herself strapped into the navigator's seat aboard the distant thunder as the ship penetrated the Draven Nebula's quantum storm. Through the viewport, she watched reality tear itself apart in slow motion. Stars existed in multiple positions simultaneously. Space itself seemed to breathe, expanding and contracting in waves. Time flowed inconsistently, her left hand aged visible while her right hand appeared to reverse, skin smoothing before aging again in irregular pulses. Dimensional turbulence increasing, Jenna Reeves reported from the tactical station. The young officer had aged 5 years and 6 months, her confidence tempered by the horror she had witnessed. Hull stress with intolerances, but barely. Darius piloted with steady hands, his eyes never leaving the sensor displays. We're following the coordinates exactly. The facility should be at the storm's center. Assuming it still exists, Simone muttered, watching her instrument struggle to maintain coherent readings. The quantum fluctuations were so intense that cause and effect became suggestions rather than rules. She saw sensor echoes of her own ship arriving hours ago and simultaneously departing days in the future. There, Jenna announced. Structure detected. It's... Captain, the facility is phasing between dimensions. It's existing in 3 separate realities simultaneously. On the main display, Simone saw what appeared to be a research station built into a massive asteroid. But the structure flickered, its appearance changing moment to moment, sometimes intact and operational, sometimes half-destroyed ruins, sometimes something stranger that hurt to look at directly. Can we dock? Darius asked. I think so, Jenna said uncertainly. If we time our approach to match the phase where it's intact, we should be able to establish a temporary dock seal. Emphasis on temporary, the dimensional overlap means we'll only have a few hours before the station shifts to another reality state. Darius guided the distant thunder through the storm with practiced skill, matching the station's dimensional phase. The docking seal engaged with a metallic clang that seemed to echo across multiple timelines. Simone unstrapped and headed for the airlock, pulling on an environmental suit designed to provide temporal shielding. Darius joined her, checking his weapon, not because they expected hostility, but because in quantum storms, sometimes threats emerged from parallel dimensions where different choices had been made. They cycled through the airlock and entered the facility. Emergency lighting flickered, casting shadows that moved independently of their sources. Simone's temporal senses showed they were experiencing localized time dilation. Minutes inside the station would translate to hours outside. According to Jexuel's data, the research archives are on sublevel 7, Simone said, consulting her datapad. The device's display flickered, showing information from 3 different timelines simultaneously. They descended through corridors that existed in uncertain states. Sometimes walls were pristine. Sometimes they showed damage from battles that hadn't occurred yet or had occurred in parallel timelines. Simone caught glimpses of ghostly figures, scientists from other realities working at consoles that existed and didn't exist simultaneously. Sublevel 7 proved to be a massive data vault, its walls lined with quantum storage crystals that pulsed with barely contained information. Simone approached the central terminal carefully, aware that any interaction could shift the facility to a different dimensional state. "This is it," she breathed, accessing the data. Complete schematics for the Council's gate network. Theoretical frameworks, test results, failure analysis from experimental phases. Everything. She downloaded rapidly, watching files transfer to her secured drive. The data was staggering in scope, 3 centuries of research compressed into quantum storage. With this, they could understand exactly how the network functioned and why it failed so catastrophically. But as she reviewed the data, something else caught her attention. A classified subdirectory labeled Project Genesis, Theoretical Applications. "Captain," Simone said slowly, "I think the Council was researching something beyond just transportation. Look at these files." Darius peered at the display. The equations and models described technology that went far beyond simple wormhole generation. The Council had been experimenting with controlled reality manipulation, the ability to create localized regions where physical laws could be adjusted, fine-tuned, or completely rewritten. They were working on option 3, Simone whispered. They knew their gate network was vulnerable. They were developing backup technology that could reshape reality if the network ever failed. Did they succeed? Darius asked. Simone delved deeper into the files, her heart pounding as she realized the implications. Yes and no. The theory is sound. The technology works. But they never implemented it because. She read the final report, dated just weeks before the Vorshin incident. Because they were afraid. The Council's own scientists warned that reality manipulation on this scale would fundamentally alter the power structure of the galaxy. Any species that controlled it would become effectively omnipotent within the affected regions. The Council leadership classified the research and buried it. Because they knew it would make their gate network obsolete, Darius said bitterly. They chose maintaining their monopoly over having a backup plan. An alarm chimed on Simone's datapad. We're running out of time. The station is about to phase into a reality where it's already collapsed. We need to leave now. They ran back through the corridors as the facility began shifting around them. Walls aged centuries in seconds. Equipment that had been pristine corroded into rust. They reached the airlock just as the docking seal began to fail, throwing themselves through and sealing the hatch behind them. The distant thunder disengaged and powered away from the station. Through the viewport, Simone watched the facility phase completely into a ruined state, then flicker out of existence as it settled into a timeline where it had been destroyed decades ago. Did you get everything? Jenna asked as they cleared the quantum storm. Everything and more, Simone replied, clutching her datapad like it contained the secrets of creation. Which, in a very real sense, it did. The journey back to Kepler's promise took subjective weeks, though only 3 days passed outside the storm. Simone spent every waking moment analyzing the data, understanding how the Council's technology worked and how the theoretical reality manipulation could be applied. By the time they docked at the research station, she had her answer. And it terrified her. Admiral Okonkwo arrived personally to review Simone's findings, along with former Administrator Velcriston representing what remained of the Council government. They gathered in the station's main conference room, looking at Simone expectantly. I'll be direct, Simone began, displaying her analysis on the holographic projector. Option 2, rebuilding the gate network, is impossible. The quantum entanglement required operates on such a delicate balance that any attempt to recreate it would risk another cascade. The Council's original network took 3 centuries to build because they had to be extraordinarily careful. We don't have 3 centuries, and we can't risk another failure. Velcris's elongated form seemed to deflate. Then billions will remain trapped. The Thessane core will live backward forever. The quantum storm in the Kelvos expanse will never clear. Not necessarily, Simone said. I found research the Council buried, technology that can manipulate reality at a fundamental level. With it, we can stabilize the fractures by rewriting the physical laws in affected regions. We can save everyone. Admiral Okonkwo, a woman whose iron composure had carried Earth through 6 months of crisis, leaned forward. What's the cost, Doctor? There's always a cost. Simone took a deep breath. Power. Whoever controls this technology controls reality itself within the affected zones. We could make regions where faster-than-light travel works differently, where aging can be controlled, where energy and matter behave according to our specifications. We would become architects of the universe. And that power would belong to humanity, Velcris said quietly. Because we cannot build this technology. Our infrastructure is destroyed, our technical expertise scattered. Only Earth has the industrial capacity and stable foundation to develop reality manipulation on the required scale. The room fell silent. Everyone understood the implications. If humanity developed this technology, they would become the dominant force in the galaxy, not through military conquest, but by literally controlling the rules of reality. Darius spoke carefully. Dr. Brackwell, I need to know. If we do this, can we make it temporary? Stabilize the fractures, save the trapped populations, then restore normal physics once the crisis is over. Simone met his eyes. Theoretically, yes. But once we have the capability to reshape reality, that power doesn't disappear. Someone will always have it. Someone will always be tempted to use it. Then we face a choice, Admiral Okonkwo said. Develop this technology and risk becoming tyrants worse than the Council ever was. Or refuse to develop it and condemn billions to eternal suffering. There is a third option, Velcris said slowly. Develop the technology, but don't keep it. Share it freely with every surviving civilization. Make reality manipulation available to all species equally. That could create chaos, Simone objected. If everyone has the power to reshape reality, we'd have competing physics in different regions. Wars fought by rewriting the universe itself. Perhaps, Velcris agreed. Or perhaps we create something new. A galaxy where no single species holds ultimate power because all species share it equally. A true federation built not on council control or human dominance, but on mutual cooperation and shared responsibility. Darius looked at Admiral Okonkwo. That's idealistic. And dangerous. And completely unprecedented. So was surviving 6 months of reality fractures, the Admiral replied. We're in unprecedented territory, Captain. Maybe we need unprecedented solutions. Simone studied the data on her display, thinking about 70 billion casualties and 23 billion still trapped in temporal anomalies and dimensional prisons. She thought about the power humanity could seize, becoming the new masters of a galaxy that once suppressed them. She thought about the responsibility that power would bring. I'll need 3 months to develop a working prototype, Simone said finally. 6 months to build enough devices to begin large-scale stabilization. And we'll need council technical expertise to help. Former Administrator Velcris, I want your best remaining scientists working with my team. Velcris nodded slowly. You will have them. And Dr. Brackwell, thank you. For choosing to help rather than to conquer. Don't thank me yet, Simone said quietly. We still have to survive this. And then we have to figure out how to responsibly share reality rewriting technology with dozens of civilizations. That might be harder than surviving the fractures. Over the following months, Simone's team worked around the clock. They combined council theoretical frameworks with human engineering pragmatism, creating devices that could project controlled quantum fields to stabilize localized spacetime. The technology was elegant and terrifying, handheld devices capable of rewriting physics within a kilometer radius. The first test came at the Thessane core. Simone personally led the mission, installing stabilization devices throughout the system. When they activated simultaneously, the temporal reversal halted, freezing for a moment before reality reasserted proper causality. The Thessians emerged from their nightmare, traumatized but alive. 2 billion people saved. More missions followed. The quantum storm in the Kelvos expanse was dispersed through careful dimensional manipulation. Populations trapped in temporal loops were freed. Ships fragmented across realities were consolidated back into singular existence. Each success felt like a miracle, and each miracle cost Simone more sleepless nights worrying about the power they were wielding. 1 year after the Vortian incident, Simone stood again at the observation window of Kepler's promise. The binary stars she had watched flicker chaotically now shone steady and separate, each existing in its proper dimension. Reality had been healed. Darius joined her, his face finally showing some peace. Final casualty count came in. 71 billion dead total. 22 billion saved through stabilization efforts. Could have been worse. Could have been better, Simone replied. 93 billion total casualties. That's the price of our success, Captain. That's what it cost to break reality and fix it again. What happens now? Darius asked. We have the power to reshape the universe. What do we do with it? Simone pulled up a diplomatic communiqué on her datapad. Next week, representatives from 47 surviving civilizations are meeting on neutral ground. They're drafting what they're calling the Accord of Shared Reality, guidelines for how reality manipulation technology can be developed, deployed, and distributed. No single species will control it. Everyone gets equal access, with collective oversight. You think it will work? I think it has to work, Simone said. Because the alternative is another empire built on monopolized power. And we've all seen how that ends. She looked out at the healed stars, thinking about the galaxy they had inherited. Broken, traumatized, but rebuilding. The Council's empire was gone, shattered as completely as the reality it had controlled. In its place, something new was emerging, messy, uncertain, but potentially better. Humanity had fired the shot that broke reality. They had developed the technology to fix it. And now they were choosing to share that power rather than hoard it. Maybe that was what made them different from the Council. Not their technology, not their military strength, but their willingness to trust others with power instead of keeping it for themselves. Or maybe Simone was being naive. Maybe the Accord would fail and the galaxy would descend into chaos. Maybe humanity would regret their generosity. But looking at those steady stars, remembering the flickering chaos they had been, Simone chose hope. The Council had built an empire on control and fear. Humanity would try something different. They would try trust. Come on, Simone said, turning from the window. We have a lot of work to do. Reality doesn't reshape itself. Darius smiled slightly. Actually, now it kind of does. That's the whole problem. Then we'd better make sure we shape it right, Simone replied. Together, they walked back to the lab where the future was being built, one quantum manipulation at a time, one shared decision after another, one collective choice to build something better from the ruins of what had been. The railgun shot that broke reality had finished the Council's empire. But from that ending came a beginning, the chance to build a galaxy where power was shared, where cooperation replaced control, and where the architects of the new universe were everyone together. It wouldn't be perfect. But it would be theirs. And that, Simone thought, was worth fighting for.